It's my great honor to welcome you all in this, this panel discussion, which is on the, climate justice and equity, shared responsibilities towards that at the second Climate Action Forum. So, before we begin, we would like to thank the organizing committee, Bangladesh Apparel Exchange, Oxfam in Bangladesh, and other partners and patrons to bring us together to discuss on these very critical issues on climate justice, equity, and just energy transition. Today, we are addressing two of the most challenging components of our time. One is climate change, and another one is energy transition. So, if you consider climate change and energy transition, in between them, there are lots of other issues that needs to be addressed. And we're very lucky here to have our distinguished panelists with us. So, I would take the privilege to introduce them with you. So, we have Mr. Edwin Kwek. He's the first counselor and team leader, Green Inclusive Development Delegation of the European Union to Bangladesh. We have Mrs. Kalpana Akhtar, founder and executive director, Bangladesh Center for Workers' Solidarity. And we have Mr. Mohammad Sohail Sadat. I think he's absent, sorry. And we have Mrs. Tanzila Tazreen, Senior Policy Advisor, Embassy of the Kingdom of the Netherlands in Bangladesh. And we have Tumo Putanian, Country Director, ILO, Bangladesh. Thank you, panelists, for your presence here. So, before we go into the panel discussion, I would like to take the opportunity to set a little tone about the topic. Dear colleagues, we are at 1.2 degrees centigrade if we consider the global warming as of 2023's data. But what I'm going to share now is a very alarming news. Like, say, during the beginning of this year, the Copernicus Climate Change Services has released a very alarming information, or you can say data, like based on the February 2023 to January 2021, based on the average monthly temperature, we have observed, the data have observed that the global climate temperature has surplus 1.5 degrees centigrade that the Paris Agreement set. So considering this situation, there emerged an indication that our global mitigation strategies and actions are inadequate. And definitely from the last COP29, this has been said, like to tripling the renewable energy and doubling the energy efficiency. So if you consider this, then we can see like we need more actions in terms of mitigations and considering the climate change scenarios as of today. But on the other hand, we have seen lots of other opportunities. Like if we consider like how much energy are there in the from the renewable sources, like continuously the earth has been struck by 173,000 terawatts if you consider only solar energy. So if you can harness them, like among the 173 terawatts, 89,000 terawatts actually has a reaction with the Earth's surface, and if we can really use this or utilize this opportunity, then we might be able to mitigate the problem that we have under climate change. So to discuss these situations and the issues that lies between climate change and energy transitions, we have our esteemed panelists. So I would go to them to have some insights and expert opinion on this transition to the renewables. So at first, I would set some organizations of this panel discussions. I would request each of the panelists to share their thoughts and expert opinion within 5 to 7 minutes. And then I would open the floor for the audience to ask you questions if they have any. and then they will wrap up the whole session. So at the beginning, I would like to ask questions to Ms. Kalpana Akhtar. So as we transit to the renewables, we assume that there might be some challenges in terms of worker rights, balancing worker rights, because as you know, that transition to renewables might need lots of efforts from different parties, and considering the changing situation, the workers might lose their jobs, and there's some other issues in terms of their rights. So as an advocate of the workers in Bangladesh, how do you see these challenges, and whether there is any gender dynamics in there? And what can you propose in terms of policy to address this kind of issues, both in Bangladesh and globally?
Okay, thank you so much. Thanks to the forum first. Okay, the challenges. Just transition, this word might be very new for many, I don't know about the room, but it's very new word for workers. But it is not that they're not facing the problem because of the transition. And the transition is not happening now. It is started happening many years ago. Just transition, this word basically came from the unions, like from the global platform. So we workers have faced these or raised these many years ago. But when it is coming down to the Bangladesh, it's become just a new word to our workers. The transition, also invented or introduced the new machineries, auto machines to the workers as well. And that is making already to losing their jobs. For instance, many of you know the sweater factory. I know many manufacturers or their colleagues are in the room. And in those sweater factories used to have a jacquard machine. And that machine used to, one machine would require 10 workers. Now we need only one worker for one machine, or sometimes one worker for two machines. So losing the jobs is already started. There is no dialogue from the manufacturers or from the government or from the brand with the workers to mitigate or to adapt this situation. When we talk about the machineries, there is no discussion about upskilling or reskilling to these workers. Or if even the discussion is started, it is from the developing agencies or from the union or some sort from the ILO. That is the discussion is started. But if we talk about in a real life, if there is any upskilling or reskilling program started, no, we are still far away from there. And from the previous panel, we already have been heard that how this climate also make vulnerable our workers. We already have seen the demographic of the heat stress, flash flood. It is all the workers who getting affected. There is a new diseases in the factories that workers are being facing. Like in a hot summer, we used to not get the fever, but workers getting fever, runny nose, red eyes, getting fainted in the production floor. This has become so new. But addressing those issues, the table has not been initiated yet. So those are challenges. And where, if you talk about the gender perspectives, in every natural disaster or every man-made disaster, it is the first who get impacted, that is women and then children. So the gender definitely comes. Like for example, when the flash flood happens in the workers' houses, it is the female workers who need to stay at home and take care of her households. It is not the man workers who do. So she should directly face the pay gap problem into that. So there are many gender issues definitely is there. It is great that discussion is started, but it needs to be faster in the country and definitely with action, and that action has to be visible. It is great that the CST there and many other European country or some point at the US or in general, northern countries coming with many legislation. But when you come to the production country with those legislation, please bring the adoption plan. And that adoption plan also need a fund. You just should not bring the policies in here and to see the changes without contributing anything. So yeah, we definitely there to contribute, but we need money. There should be a bucket of money to mitigate those problems that we have been facing. Just telling the manufacturers fix this and that should not be done. So a fix or correction need to be with a contributory fund. This is first. Second, that this transition will make also workers to lose their job, which already started, and that can be massive. If it is massive, then there is no fund set for workers' compensation. So, since COVID, we have been advocating for workers to have, a severances grantee fund to set up there. So it was, we started this because we saw the vulnerability of workers. When they lose their jobs, they were, in 7 days, they had to go back to the ground zero and start, starving with their small children. And we really don't want it to see that when the just transition really affect their jobs. We really wanted to see there is a severances grantee fund from there, for them. And that should be contributory from the companies, from the manufacturers, and definitely the governments. And that fund should be, give workers the economic security during this, during this transition or job loss. And in the country, we do have like National Action Plan, we do have Mujib Prosperity Plan, we do have Delta Plan, but all those plans doesn't talk elaborately about the just transition. It does talk about workers, training, all this, but it's very vague. So to the government, they definitely can work together and bring all this plan together and give a very clear action plan. And we cannot wait for that another 5 years. That has to be doing now. Thank you.
Thank you, Apa. You have just brought the concept of losing jobs in terms of adoption of energy efficient machineries. But if we consider like there are opportunities also, like with the energy transition, there might be opportunities for creating new jobs. So again, being the advocate of the worker rights, so do you see in your landscape that there might be, or Bangladesh would take on this opportunity to increase the job or workforce within the landscape of energy transition?
Yes, definitely. There's definitely an opportunity. Maybe 30 years ago, we didn't have garments, right? So we have, when garment started in here, we wasn't ready with the infrastructure as well. But now there is a hype to have a green factory and green factory certification. Though I have a different, critique on that green factories are green, but their jobs are gray. So we definitely can talk about it. But when you say that it can create opportunities, definitely, and we can welcome that. But we need to think that the workers, those are losing their job, they're getting the skill training so they can adopt with the new jobs they are coming to the country. Okay, every jobs like garment or any other manufacturing, automobile or anyone, no one coming to the country to do the charity. They're coming in here because there is an opportunity, and we definitely can welcome those opportunities. But our workers need to be ready with those skills whenever it comes. Thanks.
On this, like you're emphasizing on training. So who do you think would be responsible for providing these trainings in this landscape?
When we talk about these skill trainings, definitely, the first focus goes to the government, definitely. But there can be, it can be a joint, stake as well. The manufacturers can put effort on that as well, because it is their workers. Like, they are already skilled, and if they can just initiate some other or additional skill, these workers can, just learn very quickly. So definitely it can be the first. It should be coming from the government. They have Tibet programs set out there. They can strengthen that capacity, and manufacturers can definitely join, and the developing organizations, they definitely can contribute. And the workers advocate trade union, we are definitely there to help as well.
Thank you for your answers. I'll now move to Mr. Edwin Kwekwe. Uh, as you know, the EU has strict environmental and labor standards for imports. And considering these situations of energy transitions, like it definitely, complements the environmental aspects and climate change aspects. But as Mrs. Kalpana, shared the worker rights perspective, so definitely for the case of Bangladesh, because we are now not ready enough to transit to the renewables, so there might create some, stress on the worker rights. So considering this situation, like how can EU, assist Bangladesh in aligning in sustainability efforts with these standards while ensuring that the worker rights are not compromised?
Okay, thank you so much, and thank you for having me in this panel. I will tell a little bit about what we as EU are doing to support the workers, but also to help the factories to meet environmental standards. I will also tell a little bit more about the due diligence directive, which I think is strongly linked to this discussion, and we just had a presentation from a colleague from Brussels on that. But I would like to start by saying that our belief is that it is in the interest of the sector and thus of the workers to become more environmentally friendly and to respect labor rights better. The buyers are comparing Bangladesh with other countries, and it will harm your industry and you will lose jobs if you don't manage to meet environmental standards and meet labor rights. So it's not the West telling you what to do. I think, as also has been said in earlier sessions, to be competitive, to have to use the business opportunities, it's important to deliver on those standards. So then, how do we help as how do we support as European Union? First of all, we have a policy dialogue with your government, where we advocate the importance of environmental standards, but also labor rights, the importance of consulting the trade unions, importance of education and skill development. We also have a very important Team Europe initiative on decent work, focusing on skills development and upskilling of the workforce, again ensuring labor rights at the workplace. All our projects always have an important gender and gender element. So that's one thing. We consider it as part of our cooperation to really focus on decent work. And we have a Team Europe initiative under which we work together with the EU member states. And we work also together with ILO to really improve the standards in the factories. On the environmental standards, we have two important contributions that I would like to mention. We have the Team Europe initiative on the green energy transition, which altogether aims at investing 1.3 billion euros in the green energy transition in Bangladesh, focusing on energy efficiency, renewable energy, and the required grids. In this context, I want to refer to our global gateway strategy, because our investments in the renewable energy sector in Bangladesh through our so-called Bangladesh Renewable Energy Facility, it's an important flagship under our Global Gateway Initiative. And this Global Gateway Initiative tries to invest in the sectors that we consider relevant for global development, but we try to do that in a responsible way. So the governance needs to be correct. There should be accountability, transparency, corruption should be avoided. But also, for all these investments, we need environmental and social impact assessments. So we need to assess how these investments impact the people of Bangladesh. So that's that's something I wanted to mention. Then the third thing, we have one project that specifically focuses on the RMG sector. It's called it's the SRIA program, Safety Retrofits and Environmental Upgrades. So that focuses on creating a safer working environment, and it focuses on greening the factories by investing in, for example, effluent treatment plants, energy efficiency, and renewable energy. The last point I want to make is related to the due diligence directive. Part of the philosophy behind the due diligence directive is to improve the environmental standards and the conditions on the work floor in developing countries. So we are now saying that our buyers, they should not only take care of what they are doing in Europe, they should also look at the supply chain and should assess whether the workers in, for example, Bangladesh, are working under proper working conditions. And that is a risk because it makes it difficult for developing countries to apply with the due diligence directive. But the principle is it should support the working conditions in developing countries. And there we also, the European Commission or the European Union, but also the member states, and as we learned from the earlier presentation, also the buyers, the companies, they need to assist with meeting the environmental standards and with meeting the social standards. So actually, instead of saying you are asking this from us and this is harmful for us, we believe we are asking this from our buyers, and therefore we, the member states and the buyers, need to invest in the working conditions in Bangladesh. Sorry, very long answer.
No, it's okay. Well, I have another question for you. Like you brought accountability aspects. So if you consider it with climate justice aspects, like Bangladesh not being accountable for global warming, and 92% of the additional emission that happening in the atmosphere is done by the global north or the developed countries. So with that lens, like as we are now struggling to transition to the renewables and we don't have enough capacity to go for the renewables solution. So how do you see the opportunity of climate finance to tackle this kind of challenge, like climate finance to go for renewables for the countries like Bangladesh?
So first of all, we want to invest in climate and energy in Bangladesh, together with the European Investment Bank, together with the financial institutions from the EU member states, and actually also with other co-finances. Indeed, the West has a historic responsibility, but we know that if the other larger emitters don't contribute, then we will not be able to address the problem. And that's actually another very important element. If we don't manage globally to meet environmental standards, then the impacts for the poorer and more vulnerable communities will be the largest. So we think that it's also in our interest to work together with Bangladesh on your green energy transition. And we think that we should invest in making your country more resilient, so in adaptation, but it's impossible to find the funding to make countries adapt to climate change and to finance loss and damage if we don't manage to globally reduce emissions. So that's the other part of our work together with you and your government in Bangladesh.
Okay. Thank you for your answer. So I'll now move to Mr. Tumo Puotinin. Well, the ILO has been deeply involved in advocating for fair labor practices globally. So how does climate change intersect with labor rights in Bangladesh RMG sector? And what steps are necessary to ensure that the worker rights are practiced without compromising the spirit of energy transition?
Thank you. Thank you for having me. And I think it's been quite a refreshing discussion already. And I particularly liked the Lord's Foundation's video that set the scene for sort of what is the just transition generally. And I think many of the issues that I were to say have already been sort of said a bit. But I want to iterate a bit, a couple of things. One of them is that I think one can look at this issue from a perspective of the challenge and then also from the perspective of the opportunity. And I think many of the discussions that have happened here today point to the fact that there's quite a lot of knowledge, quite a lot of interest, and quite a lot of investment. But the real question is how to pull that together around a partnership so that it's not that these people expect or we need to do, but it's what do we actually do together to address the impacts of the climate change, and how do we actually get to that just and fair transition so that it comes up with the good outcome for the workers, good outcome for the businesses, and good outcome for the country as a whole. I think in the earlier panels, the negatives were already a little bit discussed. The fact that if the climate change is not addressed, there will be a huge amount of people migrating to urban spaces from climate vulnerable areas, and that will put a lot of pressure on Dhaka and on Chattogram and other places, and that will put a lot of pressure on creation of jobs, not just preserving jobs, but creation of jobs, because you suddenly have a massive amount of people who want to work and need to work. And in that challenge, it's often the women and the youth who are sort of neglected. So there has to be some plan to address that issue. The negatives also include the ambient changes, the heat stress, and the occupational safety and health issues, the absenteeism that is resulted, and also the loss of productivity. I mean, Bangladesh is not a very high-ranking country in productivity to start with. If you lose a lot of productivity in terms of climate change-related issues, then the country is in a bit of a trouble, right? But then you can look at the positives. The positives is that new jobs will be created, new technologies will be introduced. There are opportunities to reskill, upskill, repurpose. So I think that's also something that needs to be coherently looked. And you've been talking to issues like circularity and waste management. All of these things are relatively new. And there's a lot of economic value and a lot of business purposing that can be done in relation to that. And the last thing, I think, which many have mentioned, and the Lord's Foundation video also mentioned, you cannot establish policies or programs or initiatives without listening to those who are affected. So the workers are affected, the people, the communities are affected, the businesses are affected, and the society as a large is affected. So just transition strategies do need to be discussed together and jointly, and they do need to have not just a vision and a strategy, but also priorities on how to operationalize, because whilst the references to the COVID, for instance, that was something that happened quickly, and we were not ready. And that resulted into a lot of closures of businesses and a lot of problems. But just transition happens slowly. Maybe not as slow as we would like it to, but it happens relatively slowly. So we do have time, and the time is now, to come together and to have a just transition strategy for the industry, for other sectors, and for the country as a whole. And organizations like ILO and the UN system are, of course, happy to continue to help and work on that from perspective of our mandates. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tumo, and especially thanks for bringing up the recognition-based justice pillar of just energy transition. So I have a quick questions, like one follow-up questions, like say there are lots of stakeholders as we transit to the renewables, and definitely brands are one of them. So being a director of ILO, so how do you see like how to make the brands accountable through compensation as you transit to the renewables energy?
Yeah, accountable or a partner in. And I think we are all talking to the fact that Bangladesh has changed a lot in terms of the relationship between industries here and brands and buyers as partners. So I think the answer is somewhere there. In order to do modern business, in order to do compliant business, and some people talked about to shift the narrative from compliance to strategies of business, you need partnerships. So suppliers need buyers, buyers need suppliers, and Bangladesh should somehow profit in a meaningful manner from those partnerships. So I think that's where the answer lies. Continue to maintain, deepen partnerships, but also have lucid information, data, and sort of prioritization of what you want to achieve together.
Thank you for your answer. So I will now move to Mrs. Tanzila Tazrin, and I have the specific questions on how can the Netherlands and Bangladesh collaborate on climate justice initiatives, particularly in industries like RMG sectors that are both environmentally impactful and socially important for millions of workers.
Hello, it's working. Thank you very much, Imran Bhai, and thanks to all the panelists. Thanks to BAE for inviting the Dutch government to this very important topic of climate action. Maybe I go back a little bit and picking up the points from Edwin and from Tuomo as well. I think a lot has been done in terms of climate change, in terms of discussions and dialogue. So for the Netherlands government, climate change has remained a priority, and that commitment is reflected both in domestic policies of Netherlands as well as the international policies. And that's why most of you would remember the Accord, and the Dutch government is still building on the legacy of the Accord. And in there, where we prioritize a lot is also looking at the most vulnerable people in this supply chain, which is the workers. And in that regards, one of the things that the Netherlands government is working on, together with ILO Germany, is providing a social protection scheme, particularly for workers. It's the employment injury scheme. So what that does is basically covers any workplace-related injuries, and it is actually a very good example of how partnerships can work together, and that's partnership between government, partnership with employers, and partnership with workers, as well as brands. So I think just transition means more than just a retraining or skills program. I think what it requires, it's a comprehensive framework that is based on meaningful and inclusive social dialogue. What that means, you have to have a dialogue with the workers, brands, and everyone in the supply chain. So from the Dutch government point of view, I think we've been advancing on the decent work agenda for a long time. But at this moment, I think dialogue would be a very essential key for the just transition.
Okay, thank you for your answer. And there's a strong correlation with the dirty energy consumption and development. And definitely, development has different aspects, like developing in technology, like say, the Netherlands and other European countries, and considering the global north, they are superior in technology. And to transit to the renewables, it requires technological solutions. And considering the countries like Bangladesh, we don't have that much of technology. So bringing up the climate justice lens again. So how do you see the technology transfer and the patent-free technology transfer with the countries like Bangladesh, so that the country can thrive better in regards to transit to the renewables?
I think in terms of technology transfer and also knowledge transfer, there is already a lot of transfers happening across the borders. There's no, I don't want to go into depth of it. Particularly for the Dutch government, there's also a lot of companies who are already working here in the textile sector and beyond, in maritime as well as other sectors. Even in financing, Dutch government has a Dutch Climate Fund as well that is and Just Transition Funds that is also used for development cooperation purpose to support the local unions, which is why we also have union-to-union supports, and they're quite strong in Bangladesh as well. So that is one of the things that Dutch government takes into account, but also we have a strategy that we have recently launched as well, and that looks at the circular economy, the circular production process at the same time. And in there, we will also be exploring this technology transfer in a much greater scale and hopefully in a successful case. So in coming years, that's also one of the things that we will be focusing on.
Thank you, Appa. Thanks all the panelists for sharing your insights. So I would now move to the audience. So if you have any questions to our panelists, I will just take 1 or 2 questions from the audience, if you have any. So I think you have covered it well, so no questions there. So thank you again. So if I am to wrap up the panel discussions, let's say there are 4 pillars to ensure the energy transition, to a just energy transition. One is recognition-based justice that has been covered by Tumo, and Kalpana also stressed on this. And another one is like procedural justice, like as we transit to the just energy transition, we need to ensure that the process are inclusive, everybody's are heard, all the concerns are addressed. And another one is distributional justice, like all the concerns, all the parties, all the stakeholders that are involved in the energy transition, they should responsibly act and towards justice, maintaining the justice. And another one is remedial justice, like say on the way of transition, if some communities or in some parties are losing something, then we should provide enough compensation to them. So if we can maintain these pillars, the energy transition would be just energy transition, and then the countries like Bangladesh and other LDC countries will benefit from it, not losing something. So having said that, and expressing my gratitude to the panelists and to the audience to hearing us, I would like to expect a better future where all of the nations will thrive equally, and we'll have a fruitful future. So having said that, I'm just wrapping up these panel discussions, and thank you for listening to us, audience. Thank you, everyone.